Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Yeah, your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. We're delighted you're with us today. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time. If you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. And I was in touch with the people at Zeno Radio. They are the folks who keep our listen line up and operational 24 hours a day. And they say they've got it fixed. And the listen line number, if you want to check and verify that, 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249. And I'm delighted to be broadcasting with Peggy Gawley this hour. She is an individual health insurance advisor and expert. She specializes in Medicare and individual health insurance for those under 65 as well. Now, I have Medicare, and I got to tell you, it's been an absolute uphill battle. And I'm not kidding. Mrs. Finelli has worked diligently on the internet to try to figure all this out. And there are pitfalls that are not obvious. Even if you are diligent, there are pitfalls that are not obvious. So Peggy Gawley is an expert, and her office is in Springfield, Missouri. And with her permission, I will give you her office telephone number. And if you are in the state of Missouri and you'd like to contact her, she can help you. Welcome, Peggy Gawley.
Thank you, Vincent. I'm really happy to be back on your show today.
Hey, it's delightful to be broadcasting with you. Is it okay if I give out your phone number at work?
Yes.
Okay. 417-881-8333. 417-881-8333. So, Peggy, as I said, Medicare is really, really kind of confusing for most people. Even, I believe, doctors. If I remember correctly, you were telling me that an instance where a doctor had a bunch of questions that were kind of unanswered before he had his meeting with you. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And I know you like stories, so I'll tell you a few. This week in particular, I had a physician and his wife meet with me. And by the way, it's Medicare Open Enrollment right now, which is what we're going to talk about. But so anyway, it is very complicated. I met with two pharmacists on Monday, and they were confused. I mean, and you're talking pharmacists. Yesterday I met with 7 bankers in Arkansas, and I talked about Medicare. And it is very, very complicated. And the thing is, for me, it's very conversational. When I go to an employee benefits meeting for my group insurance, they outline the benefits, and you know what your copays are, et cetera. But when you're talking Medicare, it's personal, and it's different for each individual. So, yes, it's definitely, whether you're a carpenter, a doctor, a fisherman, it's all very difficult to absorb the information. So people from all walks of life have difficulty with it. So.
All right, so you're talking about Medicare Open Enrollment. What does that mean, and when is the period of open enrollment? So what is open enrollment?
Okay, Medicare Open Enrollment is for people that are already on a Medicare Part C or Part D plan. Medicare Part C is called Medicare Advantage, and it's basically a Medicare health plan which includes prescription drug coverage. Part D, Medicare Part D, is for people that have a standalone prescription drug plan in addition to their health plan. So Part C is a Medicare health plan with drug coverage, and Medicare Part D is standalone prescription drug coverage. So open enrollment is October 15th through December 7th each calendar year. And that is the only time you can change, or add coverage for the calendar year that starts the next year, for January 1 through December 31st.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so just to repeat, Medicare open enrollment is October 15th through December 7th of each year. So you cannot change your Medicare coverage outside of those dates. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Mm-hmm. And that Medicare has a Part C, which is the Advantage plan with prescription coverage. And then, so that would be a better way to go if you're willing to spend that extra money. That's Part C. Part D is just drug coverage. Is that correct? Without less expensive. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. So
okay.
The main focus I'd like to talk about today is the Part D, just because it is it's very complicated, and even if you have an Advantage plan, you still have Part D built into your health plan. And the thing about Medicare Part D is every year the formularies change. And what I mean by a formulary is it's a list of covered drugs that's in a handbook that each member gets that lists what drugs are covered. And so every year, all of the drug plans change. So you may think that you have a very inexpensive drug plan, but you have to look at other plans each year because one medication you take may not be in that, what I call a formulary for the next year. I had a lady come in the other day, and she takes an EpiPen, and I'm sure you, Vincent, know what an EpiPen is. Sure. Mm-hmm. So we looked at her plan, her current plan, and for 2018, they excluded the EpiPen from that plan. And so the cost of that EpiPen was $753. So I found her a different plan, and her copay was $30. So, folks, this is really confusing, but I can give you tools to make it very simple. But that's just one prime example of you need to revisit every single year your drug plan because you may have one drug that's not covered for the next year.
Do you find, Peggy, that some of your clients had wished that they met with you sooner because you've saved them money? And this is not a commercial. I'm actually speaking as someone who sat in your office with my wife and has learned just from some of the things that you've talked about, like how to find lower cost prescriptions. You can actually shop and type in a prescription and find out that there are 17 places near you that offer that prescription at different prices. Are you finding that people say, Peggy Gawley, I really wish I met you sooner because we're talking thousands of dollars that went down the drain?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's there are so many, and here's the thing about health insurance, whether you're on a group plan or you're on a Medicare drug plan, you have to have coverage, but you don't always have to use your drug plan. Vincent, you and I talked about, and I'm not promoting this, but it's called GoodRx, GoodRx. So, you could go to GoodRx and put in the name of a prescription, enter your zip code, and it will show you all of the costs for that medication in your area and for all the pharmacies. So folks, it's important to kind of think outside the box. And in addition to that, all pharmacies have a generic drug list, $10 for a 90-day supply. So you have to have drug coverage, but yes, people come to me, Vincent, and they say, yes, I wish I would have met with you so that I've known, wow, there's ways I can really, really save on my prescription costs.
Class, I'm not exaggerating when I say that this information can really save you a lot of money. And Peggy is our health advocate and health advisor, and she's taking care of us. And the reason that she's on the air with us is because I was so impressed with what she did and how she was willing to go above and beyond and even spend hours, no exaggeration, on the phone on our behalf. Gosh, what a nightmare it's been, and thank you, Peggy, for taking care of us. Well, all right, so let's get right into in Medicare. What would you like to share with us today?
Well, what I'd like to share today is in regards to your prescription drug coverage. What I want people to do is that have Medicare Part D is make sure you have a really accurate list of your prescription drugs. I mean, it is so important that you have the list and know exactly what you're taking. Talk to your pharmacist, and I want to mention SHIP, which we've talked about before, State Health Insurance Program for the state of Missouri. You can look at it if you have a Medicare and you book that comes to your state. It's on the back. For Missouri, it's the number is 1-800-390-3330. But you really need an expert to help you with Medicare Part D. And Vincent, I'm not sure if we talked about this last time, but when you call 1-800-Medicare, you're not talking to federal employees. You are talking to people that are trained, but they are outsourced, and they do help you, but they are not government employees. So you really, really need to understand that when you call, you've got to have your information accurate on your prescription. So you could contact your pharmacy and see if they have, sometimes pharmacies during open enrollment will have someone in their facility to help you.
Okay, and are you saying that they're not federal employees and therefore they may have a bias? Is that part of the equation?
You have to ask them really specific questions, and I can give you a list of those.
Okay.
You have to be specific when you call in.
All right, let's do that when we come back. Peggy Gawley's with us. Medicare Open Enrollment. Peggy Gawley's with us, and we're talking about Medicare. It's open enrollment time, October 15th through December 7th each year. And Peggy, you've got some questions that we should be prepared to ask when we're on the phone. Now, who are we on the phone with?
Well, when you you can call SHIP, State Health Insurance Program. You can call 1-800-Medicare. And, there are a lot of my clients that really want to take this on themselves. And if they really do, and you listeners on the radio, I want to give really good tools so that you can do that. So if you stick to the right questions, as I said, when you call 1-800-Medicare, they are trained professionals. They're not government employees. They don't know everything that, the federal government does, but they are trained. So when you call, here's a few tips that I want you to have by the phone when you call, whether you call SHIP or whether you call Medicare. And by the way, Medicare is open 24/7. The best time to call them is actually later at night. They're not as busy. But so, Vincent, I'm going to provide a list of a few things for people that they need to write down. So when they call SHIP or when they call Medicare, they ask the right questions. So the first thing you want to do is you want to have your prescription drug bottles with you at your phone when you're getting ready to call. So Medicare will talk to you. You want to answer the questions regarding your personal identification information. You want to give them the names of your 2 favorite pharmacies. You want to have your Medicare card with you, some paper and a pen when you call. So kind of have your little cheat sheet. So when you call Medicare, you want to tell them, I want a standalone, and the key word is standalone. Because if you're only wanting Part D, you want a standalone prescription drug plan. If you just say you want drug coverage, you're not sure whether they will guide you towards a Part C Advantage plan or a drug plan. So again, my focus today is Part D only. So you want to tell them that you want a standalone prescription drug plan. And so what you're going to do, Medicare will talk about the 3 lowest cost drug plans for you. So what you want to do is you want to give them the names of your medications, the dosages, how often you take them, and again, folks, be very, very specific. If you take insulin, make sure you tell them how many insulin shots you get a month. So give them all of this information, and then what they will do is they will tell you the 3 lowest drug plans available for you. And so you want to write down the name of the plan, the company. You want to know what the monthly premium is, and your co-pays. No, Vincent, I want to retract a little bit. We haven't talked about the donut hole. Do you know what the donut hole is?
Yeah, it's a date. It's a date period, right?
The donut hole is a middle gap in your Medicare prescription drug coverage, to where after you've spent a certain amount of money, the coverage gap begins, and you're paying a larger amount for your prescriptions in this donut hole. Okay, so that's not what I thought it was. All right. So if you'd like, I can explain what this donut hole is. Please do. Okay. So every year on your prescription drug coverage starts from January 1st through December 31st. So you have to have spent $3,750 in retail costs on your prescriptions at the pharmacy. And when I say retail, the full cost of the drug, not your copay. So when you get to that point, you're in what's called a coverage gap. It's a donut hole. And so in that point, when you're in that stage, then you're going to pay a percentage of your drugs, whether they're brand name or generics, until you reach $5,000. And folks, this is for 2018. So you're in the donut hole when you've spent $3,750 in retail costs, and then when you reach $5,000, you're out of the donut hole, and you're in the last stage, the catastrophic, where you pay a small amount the rest of the year. All right, let's talk more about that. And did you say that after the $5,000, it's considered catastrophic what? Yes. Then you're paying a very small amount for generic drugs. So the catastrophic phase is the last phase, and your costs go down. That's Peggy Gawley's with us, and we were talking about Medicare Part D prescription drug coverage. Peggy, you mentioned that this donut hole starts at $3,750 and then continues through to $5,000 in retail prices. Now, how do we know when we hit the $3,750 or the $5,000? Are we alerted to that, or do we have to keep track of that ourselves? Well, in the different ways in which you research your drug plan, I sent you a Medicare drug plan finder worksheet. If you go to www.medicare.gov and you put in your own prescription and your zip code and you sort them, it will show you. Number one, it'll show you all the plans available, but in particular, each drug plan, you can actually. One of the things I wanted to mention is when you call and you have your prescriptions and you speak to Medicare or SHIP, here's the most important question you need to ask. When will I hit the donut hole? So, you don't have to try and figure this out all on your own, because if someone is advising you on a drug plan, whether it's an insurance agent, whether it's someone with SHIP or Medicare, the key question is to ask them, will I and when will I hit that donut hole. And the initial coverage I wanted to mention, it's what you and your insurance plan pay for the shared cost. In other words, it's the retail cost plus your copays that get you to that donut hole. And so, so once you're in that donut hole, you need to know what month that will happen. For example, most of my clients call me around September or October because they've gone to the pharmacy and the pharmacist says, this is going to be $200, and they're used to paying a $20. So I get the call, and so they forget. So before you enroll in a new drug plan, you can find out when you will hit that donut hole before you even choose that particular plan.
Okay. Well, does this donut hole, is it affected by the pharmacy pricing? Because the retail pricing is different pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy, right?
Exactly. It is totally, because the thing is, every drug plan has different pricing. So the goal is to find the plan with the cheapest drug costs. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the show, you don't have to use your drug plan. And what I mean by that is, if you take some generic medications that are very inexpensive, you can ask your pharmacy to just let you pay for those direct and not use your drug plan. So there are things you can do to eliminate getting into that coverage gap or the donut hole. I will tell you, it takes someone with a pretty hefty medication list to get into this donut hole, so I don't want to scare people off. But if you have a very long list of medications, there's a high propensity you might end up in that gap. But then again, you can also, as I mentioned earlier, go to GoodRx and research and see if there's something that you could just pay out of pocket to minimize some of your expenses. You do have to use you do have to have a drug plan, but you don't always have to use it.
Okay. Peggy, let me ask you this. Just for our class's benefit, do you have a rough number of how many prescriptions a typical person might be on? Do you have a rough number? Is it 10, 11, 12, 3?
Actually, I have probably a couple of different classifications. I have one group of people, a large segment, that are very healthy individuals that take either no medications or one or two. I have a middle class of people that take, an average list would probably be 5 to 8 medications. And then I have, as one lady told me last week, her husband was a walking pharmacy. So it's the ones that have the large list of medications. A lot of people that are on insulin, diabetic, they've got certain conditions to where you've got injectables, pens for your diabetes, inhalers. Some of those things are really high dollar. So if you're on a heart medication that's generic, 3 or 4 medications, you're not going to worry about it. It's the people that have some very specific health conditions that their medication list is 10 to 20. I've seen a 4-page list before. So the donut hole won't apply to you if you are on 3 or 4 medications. It's only for those people that have a very, very large list of drugs, and that's where you really, really need to either call SHIP. I would not recommend calling 1-800-MEDICARE if you have a very long list. I recommend that you consult with a professional. Again, there are some pharmacies during open enrollment that will have an in-house agent at a table that can sit down with you and help you. So,
can you tell us why we're even talking about this compared to original Medicare? We've got original Medicare. Can you explain what that is, and then why we are talking about Part D, the Medicare drug coverage? Why is it that people just don't either get Medicare or do nothing?
Well, when you're first eligible for original Medicare, as we talked about in our first session, it's original Medicare Part A and Part B. And then the other 2 parts that we're talking about today are C and D. So original Medicare, Part A is your hospitalization, Part B is your medical. Now, as far as prescriptions go, anything that you get filled at the pharmacy is not covered under Medicare Part B. Medicare Part B covers injectables for, cancer treatments, but any kind of medication that you take, original Medicare does not cover. Only Medicare Part D covers prescription drug coverage.
Okay, so someone that has kidney problems, they would not be covered if there's kidney medication or lung medication or skin disease or something like that. Those are not covered by Part B?
Actually, any oral or injectable medication that you take, regardless of the condition, is, and especially if it's covered in an inpatient or skilled nursing facility or even possibly outpatient, any injectable or cancer medication, those all fall under Medicare Part B as in boy. Anything that you can administer at home, that is what's covered under your Part D. So if you have original Medicare, Part A and Part B, and you don't have prescription drug coverage, then you will have to pay out of pocket for your prescription drug plan. And when you're eligible for Medicare, Vincent, when you're first eligible for Medicare, if you work for an employer and you have employer coverage, you don't need Medicare Part D because you have credible coverage through your health plan. So people that are 65 and have an employer plan, they have credible coverage. It's when you leave original Medicare and you decide to take out a standalone drug plan or an Advantage plan, it's when you need prescription coverage. The Part D, and if you decide to retire and leave original Medicare and take out a health plan, if you don't take out Part D when you're eligible, you're penalized for it, and the penalty never goes away.
Yeah, tell us about that penalty. What triggers it once more, and about what does it cost typically?
Okay, so when you're first eligible for Medicare, unless you qualify for an exception, you may have to pay a penalty if you don't sign up for Medicare Part D as soon as you're eligible. Medicare sets this penalty, and for each month you delay, you'll pay an additional 1% of whatever that drug premium cost would be. And you'll pay that penalty as long as you've enrolled in Medicare. So, for example, I had a gentleman that was 70 years old. He did not take out a Part D drug plan when he was eligible, and he decided during open enrollment, I really want to take out a drug plan. So he had to pay a penalty in addition to whatever the premium was for the drug plan. So if you don't take out a drug plan when you're eligible, you're penalized. But the exception to that is if you have employer coverage and you have credible prescription coverage through your employer, Medicare will not penalize you.
Let me see if I've got this right, Peggy. So okay. a 70-year-old who delayed for 5 years, right? That's typically what we're talking about, okay? 5 years times 12 months, that's 60 months. He's paying a penalty of 60 times 1% or 60% more than had he originally signed up.
He'll pay 1% for each month he delayed. So,
right.
Let's see, 12 times 5 is,
60.
Yeah. So he'll pay, say his prescription drug plan was $17 a month. So he would pay the $17 a month, and he'd pay the 1% times 60 months, which is...
Okay, 60% more. So he's paying 17 plus 60% more.
Yeah.
Because of that delay. Okay, so that's absolutely worth thinking about. And there's no getting around that unless you have a bona fide exception in the eyes of Medicare, right?
Yes, and a bona fide exception, Vincent, I'm glad you said that, because actually if you have TRICARE, military care, then that is considered credible coverage. So if you have military TRICARE, then you don't have to take out a Part D drug plan. That's considered credible. The only caution with people that are on TRICARE is a lot of times you can only get your prescriptions filled at a veterans facility, so it's easily accessible.
When we come back, would you share with us a story that, if you've got one, that here's something that you don't want to do regarding Medicare Part D? Do you have a story like that?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that when we come back. Peggy Gawley's with us, and I'll give you her number when we come back. Peggy Gawley's with us, and let me give you her phone number. If you're in Missouri and you'd like her assistance, 417-881-8333. That's her work number, 417-881-8333. And let's see, I believe the screen keeps changing. I believe we've got a caller. Welcome. I don't know your name because it doesn't say it on the screen.
Hello, this is Gwyneth speaking.
Hey, Gwyneth.
Hello.
We're talking.
I thought that we would be talking to Patrick.
Well, okay. All right. Patrick is going to be on with us the next hour. He answered the phone. Gwyneth is our instructor on Tuesday. She's live in Australia, and she's calling you up. Wow, it's pretty late where you are. But did you want to stay with us and have Patrick call you for when he's on with us?
Yeah,
that's next hour.
Good, thanks. Yep. I have no idea
why don't we do this?
Does.
Okay. Well, we're talking about Medicare, but I'll tell you what. Why don't you? We'll have you hang up, and Patrick will call you back for the next hour, and you can be on with him, and we're going to be talking about millennials because he disagrees with some of the things that I say. All right, Gwyneth, thanks very much. We'll call you right back.
Okay. See you.
We have instructors all over the world, Peggy, and Gwyneth lives off the grid, and it's night there, and she has no electricity at this time of night because her battery bank is depleted. So she cannot listen to our broadcast on the internet because she has a satellite antenna to pick it up, but that's powered by her solar system, and that's not working at this hour of the evening. So she's kind of in the dark in a number of ways. She lives in an adobe farmhouse, totally off the grid. But anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit of information. So please tell us a story about Medicare Part D, if you will. Here's a story that you don't want to repeat, class. You don't want to do what Peggy's going to tell us about.
Okay, so I've kind of got two stories I'll combine into one. You don't ever want to assume that your medication is not covered. And I had a lady on a Part D drug plan, and I had Medicare on the phone with her, and they told her it wasn't covered. Well, as we talked about earlier, there are medications covered under Part B and Part D, and it was an oral cancer medication. It was extremely expensive. So the moral of this story is don't ever assume a medication. Check whether it's covered under Part B or Part D. Don't ever assume that it's not covered. And another thing is always, always, always every year, don't assume your medications are going to be covered under the next year because in a lot of cases there are not. My story is a beautiful woman came in last open enrollment. Her husband passed away. She was here to give me the death certificate. She was very distraught, and she said, Peggy, I just don't really have time for this. I'm grieving over my husband. I said, give me 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes. So we looked at her medications. She said, excuse me, I'm not taking this or this or this. Within a 5-minute conversation, I saved her $800 just by taking the time to look at that list. Folks, it's not about your drug premiums. It's $20. It's whether those medications are going to be covered that next year. So just make sure you know what you take and have someone help you. I can direct you to people that can help you. Just know what you take so that you can save money every single year. It's worth it.
Peggy, so what I'm hearing is that different plans cover different drugs, and there are different payment amounts for each of those drugs, correct? And so the key is to search out the plan that covers your individual circumstances to the best for your financial benefit. Isn't that right?
Yes, if you know what meds you take, that's the most important step. Medicare, we can sort the rest. It will find the plan based on what you take. It will find the best plan for you for the next year.
Yeah, and don't you recommend sometimes that, hey, call your doctor because there's a lower cost alternative to this drug that you're taking, and this can get you on another plan and save even more money. Don't you do that as well?
Yes, you do. And also, with your drug plan, keep the formulary or have them send you that list of drugs. Take that list of drugs with you to the doctor or call the doctor.
Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. You know, several weeks ago, I connected to GCN as I normally do in the morning, and I said, is our instructor here? I'm here. Is our instructor here? And Patrick said, no. Okay.
Well, actually, it was sometime into the show.
Yeah. And so we decided that, okay, what are we going to do? And Patrick said, well, I can do it. I said, great, okay. So, no safety net. Patrick had never been on the air with me before. And what typically happens with the broadcast engineers is, they run the broadcast, but very few of them really want to come on the air. How do I know? Because I've asked them over the years, hey, you want to come on the air with me and talk about what you do? No. And they're polite, but they prefer to be behind the scenes. So Patrick just stepped up, as a typical USA Prepares instructor would do, and got on the microphone and unrehearsed, no talking points. We just did the broadcast. And it was great. And then during the commercial announcements sometimes, and before the broadcast, sometimes I get a few minutes to talk with our engineers, and I was talking to Patrick, and I said, so Patrick, it must be kind of fun. You guys go into the GCN break room and you get a chance to swap stories and, talk about the broadcast, the instructors and what they've said and, what the topics are and those kinds of things. And I said, I'll bet that's a lot of fun. He said, yeah. And I said, so do you find that you agree or disagree? Do the engineers agree or disagree with what the hosts are saying? Now, here's why I said that. Now, imagine having a job where you really don't say anything, but you're hearing things that you might disagree with. What would that be like? Gosh, must be tough. So I asked him if he agrees or disagrees with the host, and he said, well, Vinny, I don't, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't always agree with what you say. So my response was, what? Are you kidding? You don't agree? And I'm being serious because why? Well, because based on my experience, based on my time on this planet, things I've seen, witnessed, done, I think I'm right. Honest to God, I think I'm right. And I don't say things that I think are wrong. So what you hear coming out of my mouth are things that I absolutely, positively believe are true. So Patrick said that he doesn't always agree with me. So I said, well, okay, why don't we go on the air together? And let's talk about it. So here we are. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you.
So, Patrick, let me ask you. Oh, and Gwyneth is with us, right? She dialed in, and we called her back,
She's
right?
Here. Yeah.
So Gwyneth is with us. Welcome, Gwyneth. So,
hello. How are you?
Great. So we're going to talk about things that our hosts may not agree with that we say here on USA Prepares. Now, we have some conservative views. I don't know what you'd call them now, whether you'd call them liberal or what, but, libertarian, freedom-loving, that's certainly our viewpoint. Not liking what the blue team does, that's certainly our viewpoint in many, many cases. So, Patrick, what is it that I've said that you don't agree with? Why don't we start with just one of those topics?
Well, we were starting with talking about millennials, and we had a chance to talk a little bit yesterday during one of the...
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me? Gwyneth? Can you hear me? Are you hearing me? Vince, are you still there?
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, please continue, Patrick.
I can't hear anybody else.
Can you hear me, Gwyneth?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay,
Great.
cool.
Great.
Yeah, so we were talking during one of the breaks, and just about some of the things that you say about millennials, which I feel are a bit unnecessarily disparaging, and you had the chance to clarify more what you meant, and I clarified more what I meant. Recreating that now would be good, but...
Why don't we do that? Do you want to do that? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, if you're able to, yeah.
Sure.
That'd be cool.
Sure. What I said to Patrick was that, in my experience, millennials don't know how to do some things that I think they should know how to do. But, and let me give you some examples, and I'll tell you why I think they don't know how to do some of those things. For example, something as simple as changing the air filter on an automobile, the one that they're driving.
Yeah.
Changing the oil on the vehicle that they're driving. Knowing when to change the oil on the vehicle that they're driving, that they tend not to do. Now, these are experiences that I've seen with millennials whom I know. Okay? Now, why is that? Now, I blame my generation for much of that. I blame the government for much of that. I blame the school systems for much of that. And here's why. Parents, my generation, we had it better than, I have it better than my parents. Why? Because I didn't grow up through most of the Depression. I didn't have to go without food, like many who lived through the Depression, like my parents did, and they'd have coupons for, flour and sugar and meat. They'd have, ration coupons. Well, we didn't have to do that. If we could afford it and we worked hard enough to come up with the money, we could buy those things. We didn't have to not only have the money, but have the coupons. We didn't, we just had to have the money. All right. So we wanted it better for our children than and just like our parents wanted our lives to be better, we wanted our children's lives to be better. So some of us, not me, thought that it'd be better to just buy things for our children rather than have them earn them. That was a disservice.
Yeah,
that was a disservice. Our children, like for example, our daughter, when she was the first to learn how to operate a vehicle. Well, in order to do that, she had to do certain things, like sign a contract with me, a legitimate contract that said she would do certain things, like she would do all the maintenance on the vehicle that she was driving, including checking the tire pressures, including learning how to change a flat tire, including changing the oil, replacing the brakes, adding refrigerant to the air conditioning system should it need it. Whatever the vehicle needed, she had to do it. Now, it didn't mean I'd say, okay, well, it's a problem with the car. You figure out what the problem is and how to fix it. That wasn't the case. The case was, wow, it looks like we have a flat tire. So let's learn how to change that together. Now, here's what we're going to do. Actually, here's what you'll be turning the wrench. Okay, here's why you do what you do. Here are the safety considerations when it came to the oil changes. Okay, here's why we change the oil when it's hot. Here are the cautions. Here's the kind of oil we're using because. Here are the reasons. Here's the kind of oil filter we're using. Here's why we jack up the car. Here's why we set the parking brake. Here's why we chock the wheel so it doesn't roll back over you and kill you. I mean, so I did all those kinds of things with our daughter. Now, some people said that, boy, that's really cruel and unusual punishment. How can you make your daughter do those kinds of things?
To be fair, Vincent, did anyone actually say that to you?
Yes.
Really?
As a matter of fact, yes. Yes, I was hauled into the dean's office at, our daughter started attending college. She was homeschooled, started attending college at the age of 14, taking courses that she liked. I ended up in the dean's office, and our daughter showed the contract to the dean. He pulled it out and said, "You really make your daughter do this?" I said, "Absolutely." Absolutely. And he said, that's over the top. That's unfair. That's unusual. Really? And I said, you know what, Dean, I didn't get an owner's manual when our daughter showed up. So I'm figuring this out on the fly, and I'm doing what I think is best for her and our family. And by the way, she's our daughter, not yours.
Yeah.
So it didn't go over so well.
Yeah.
But no, I got, yes, that's absolutely the truth. And so, yeah, And to this day, our daughter will call us and say, here's the symptoms that I think here's what I need to do. And we'll talk about her, she has her own home. We'll talk about her heat pump system and why, we'll review the symptoms and what I think is wrong, what she thinks is wrong. And I'll say, well, okay, why don't you test this, 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 and this? And then you can call me back and we'll talk some more. So she has a fundamental knowledge of how things work. But I don't think that was common.
No, I don't think it was either. And, I'm sure there were not just like baby boomer parents who just had everything done for their kids and didn't teach them anything. I think there was also just a lot of broken homes and parents who didn't really care. But I guess what I've seen of folks around my age and younger is things needing to be done anyway, and not having money, not having a safety net, and needing to make things happen. I've traveled all over the country, and especially in places like in the Rust Belt, like Toledo or Buffalo, New York, like young people spearheading like community gardens, or like the city not really caring about people squatting, so like renovating houses and things like that, and skill sharing and things like that, because the need was there. And that's largely been my experience. Are there those millennials out there who are really just into their smartphone and having everyone do things for them? Sure. I don't really know that many of them.
Okay. That's what I see. For the most part, I see a highly educated group of young people. I mean, they're educated more than previous generations. They spend more time in school. They have more school debt. And they are addicted to their smartphones. You take their smartphone away from them, and they have trouble with most things. Like, how far is it from here to there? Well, they'll look it up on their phone.
Well, that's an interesting point there, because with access to the internet, if someone has the desire, they can get as good as a college education or better, just with a desire to learn.
Yeah, I agree with that. With that. College, I think, in many circumstances, is overrated. Let's have Gwyneth weigh in when we come back from these commercial announcements.
Okay.
We're talking with Patrick and Gwyneth Isaacs, and we're talking about millennials. We'll be right back. So we're talking about millennials, and, maybe I was overly critical on millennials. However, I do feel that we adults failed our millennials. One thing that we did not do, well, we weren't strict enough, okay? We let them have so much freedom that maybe they went outside the envelope. I think
well, to be fair, I think there were plenty of baby boomer parents that were just straight up abusive as well.
Oh, sure. And you can read the news about that. But a lot of parents wanted our children to have it better, and having it better meant that's dirty work, and boy, maybe we could get someone to do that for us, and maybe raking the leaves, that's kind of, well, heck, maybe we shouldn't do that to our children. Maybe we should hire somebody to rake the leaves and mow the lawn and wash the cars and clean out the gutters, and those kinds of things. And we did some really dumb things, my generation, and that would be the baby boomers. We pulled marksmanship classes or clubs out of schools, and you learned, heck, I'm talking about shooting rifles, 22s, in school, okay, in marksmanship clubs, and you'd learn about gravity, you'd learn about a trajectory, you'd learn about pressure of the cartridges, you'd learn about rifling, you'd learn a lot of things. Okay, we took that out, and then we took out classes in trades like auto mechanics. Heck, we don't need to get dirty, getting grease under our fingernails with auto mechanics, or heck, plumbing. That's pretty disgusting. And what about carpentry? Well, you get a lot of splinters, and that's hard work. And electricity gets shocked, and masonry, boy, that's heavy, and your hands get all beat up. So we've gradually pulled out those kinds of trade classes from the public schools. And then you add to that, as you mentioned, Patrick, broken homes. That's really tough. How do we get broken homes? Well, economy's a big player in that. Television,
True, yeah.
You know, the grass is always greener. That other woman's always better than the one we've got. Heck, let's dump ours and get that new one. You know, heck, get 222s for a 44, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that was going on.
Yeah,
and then,
you've made that one point in there, though, a few times I've noticed on your show about taking certain classes out of public school, and that's absolutely right. I got a terrible education, but yeah, I do think there is room for the individual. Like, the individual has the tools available to compensate and learn those skills. Like, you can still learn carpentry, you can still learn plumbing, and the need is still there. And if you're broke, you're not going to have someone come and mow your lawn for you. You're going to do it yourself, or, like, you know, if you live in a city like I do, you'll get ticketed. So you mow the lawn.
Let me give you one more point, and then I'd love to hear what Gwyneth has to say.
Yeah.
So I went into an auto parts store with our son, and so there's 3 or 4 guys just kind of leaning on the counter there, you know, behind the counter. They're all dressed in the, you know, the shirts of the day, the color of the uniform of the auto parts store. So they're in uniform, so it's easy to figure out who they are. Not only are they on the other side of the counter from the customers, but they're all dressed alike. So I'm waiting for our guy to go in the back and get the part. And so I said to these young guys, so did you guys have you opened up all the boxes, you know, back there and looked at all these parts and, you know, get familiar with them? No. Why? Well, they don't pay us enough to do that. So, okay. And I said, you know, when I was your age, I was behind the counter. I did what you did at an independent auto parts store, and I opened up every box. And what happened was, when I first started that position, you know, the regular customers would come in, and I'd say, may I help you? And they go, no. I'll wait for Tom. Tom was the guy who had plenty of experience. He'd been there for 20, 30, 40 years, and he knew everything. They didn't want this young guy to help them because I didn't know very much. Well, I opened up every box. Pretty soon they were asking for me because I knew everything that we had. So if they come in and put a part on the counter and say, hey, do you have one of these? I go, yeah, we have 3 of them, and good, better, and best quality. Here they are. Let me get them for you. And, you know, they like that. But the guys that at the auto parts store today say, no, they don't pay me enough for that. Now, those are all millennials.
That's true, though. They don't pay them enough.
Well, they paid me $1.85.
Yeah, but what does that translate to in today's money?
I don't know. Not very much. I mean, you know, living at home, I could, and after school wages, that would be fine. But, you know, yeah, you're right. It's not a lot of money, but that's what they pay.
Yeah.
So, but if they wanted to rise to the top of that class behind the counter, they open up every box. But no, they're not paid enough for that. That was their attitude. And I think it's a bad attitude. And my son said to me, hey, Dad, if they worked for you, you'd fire them, wouldn't you? And I said, you bet. I'd fire them right now. We'll be right back. Gwyneth, you're up next.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, Gwyneth, your turn to weigh in.
Hi. Yeah, I have 2 teenage sons. And one of them is about 14 and the other one is about 16. So I guess they would probably count in the millennial generation. But I would like to, you know, just...
Gwyneth, we're getting an echo. Patrick, are you hearing this echo as well?
Try now.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's try it now. Go ahead, Gwyneth. No, we still have it. Are you on speaker?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. Well, let's continue, and hopefully we can solve this echo problem. Go ahead.
Okay. I have 2 teenage sons. One of them would be 14 and the other one would be about 16. And I suppose that would count for the millennial generation. Probably at the lower end of it. But I'll just tell you some observations of what I've seen of my sons and their colleagues at the public training camp, and also the prison warders at the public training camp. Oh, sorry, I was supposed to say teachers.
Yes.
But anyway, Yeah, the teachers at the school. Oh gosh, I'll start with the students, all right? The students, my sons would probably be the exception rather than the rule at their school, okay, because they tend to stand out in their class. They tend to stand out because if there's anyone has a disagreement with the way that things are run at the school, it tends to go back to one or both of my sons, usually the older one. And, you know, he's independent-minded, and he has a very, very high IQ of about 145, and, you know, can mentally run rings around most of his teachers, and that tends to get him into trouble because his teachers don't think that it's fair that he actually knows more than they do on a lot of topics. And the teachers, I would say, mostly would come from the baby boomer and maybe the Generation X generation. And some of them, the worst of them, have actually been in the town for, not only were they born in the town, they went to the school in the town, and they graduated from the school in the town, and they went to teachers' college, and then they came back to the school in the town, and they have never been to anywhere else in their professional life other than the school in the town. And I said, well, I said this to my son the other day, I said, how much life experience do you think that gives that teacher? And he said, probably not much. And I would say, you're probably right. Now, for example, this very same teacher, shall I embarrass her by putting her name on the air?
Well, let's not for today.
I won't for today. But anyway, I will tell you the story because it's rather amusing. My son's school is the only school in the local district, and otherwise he would have to travel, you know, a ridiculous distance into the nearest really big town to go to one of the schools there. But the local school has been declared one of a United Nations safe school. And Jesus Christ got it absolutely right when he said, when you hear the words peace and safety, you know that sudden destruction cometh. You know Jesus said that? So whenever I hear anyone talking about peace, safety, prosperity, security, peace and safety, I tend to get a little bit nervous. And you know what a safe school is? Let me give you a clue. They only have one type of bathroom there. That's what type of school a safe school is. They're all into their social justice warrior. And, you know, they have classes on, sexual health and mental health. And today they had one of these mental health classes, and my son came home and said, oh, guess what, Mum? Half of my grade got suspended today. And I said, what? What did they do? And I quite literally laughed because I said, oh, here we go, this will be fun. They had one of these mental health classes in the school, okay? And the response for half of his grade, which was grade 10, was that the class just didn't show up. For the whole class. They knew it was scheduled. They knew what it would be like. They knew that it would be a whole hour or so of them getting propaganda shoved down their throats, so they decided that they just weren't going to do it. So they passed the hat around and came up with $20 and headed for the local chip shop.
And Gwyneth is in Australia, class, so this is not happening in the United States, at least in this discussion. It probably is somewhere in the United States, We're talking about Australia.
This is in Australia.
Now, how does this
government United Nations sponsored program called Safe Schools?
Now, Gwyneth, are you relating this story because you're saying that it's not necessarily the young people's fault because they're being indoctrinated with these ridiculous kinds of concepts, and they're not learning things
I believe it is also the cell phones, okay? But you definitely notice the difference between the children who are homeschooled and not vaccinated and the children who have always been to the local state school and have received all their shots. They're definitely two different groups of people.
Patrick, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Do you think that that's true?
I don't really have an opinion on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember going up to a young lady at Sam's Club. She's a young girl. And I said, you know, I could tell from about 100 feet away that you're homeschooled. Is that true? And she said yes. And, you know, I carefully approached this young girl because I didn't want her to think that I was some kind of a predator. I talked to her mother and said, I kind of asked her mother and her that same question at the same time. And I said, you know, you can see a difference with young people who are homeschooled. They don't seem to have this ADHD. They seem to be very deliberate about the things that they're doing. Their attention is focused in the direction that it should be at the time. At least that's my take. And so, Patrick, are there other things that you and I disagree with? Because it sounds like we really don't disagree too much on the millennials. Because I believe that it's the fault of the adults in a large way as to why some millennials don't know things that I think they should know.
I think it's an interesting topic worth exploring in the future. Like, there are different nuances to it and different aspects to it that are kind of interesting. Yeah, I mean, can't, put down the baby boomers entirely because, they invented things like acid. That was a joke. But,
talking about Timothy Leary. And if you ask one of our instructors, Rick Miller, he'll tell you all about it.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's a conversation that is worth exploring more. I don't think I mean to put down anyone or put the blame on anyone, but it's more like why come down on millennials when it's not all of them anyway, just as it wasn't all the baby boomers anyway. It was a group that gave everyone made everyone look bad, you know?
Yeah, it gave us all a rash. You know, and when you talk about the baby boomers, my generation, the Wall Street crowd that, originally started ripping people off, I mean, that's atrocious. It's absolutely atrocious what they've done. And the corporate greed.
Yeah.
Where you have CEOs of corporations making, the CEO of Disney at one time made $81 million a year. Really? What makes him worth $81 million a year compared to some other CEO of some other corporation that might be making $500,000 a year? And the CEO of United States of America Corporation, sometimes called the president, makes like $400,000 a year. Okay? I mean, without bribes and kickbacks and payoffs and whatever else they may increase their compensation by. But what I'm saying is the corporate greed that has shifted the American dream outside of America. For example, the companies that have shifted jobs, like Nike, with their sneakers, and Craftsman tools. Now, where are they made? A lot of them are made in China. Heck, Craftsman tools made in China. So how is that young guy who wants to get his high school diploma, work at the factory that makes those tools, how's he going to do that when the company's no longer making tools in this country? How's he going to do that? So the corporate greed of the boards of directors and CEOs and upper management of corporations that used to make things in this country that have actually shifted those jobs outside the country for their own personal benefit. It's an outrage. It's an absolute outrage.
It is, but I guess I would take that one step farther. It's they exported it to other places where they could exploit and abuse people and I am interested in the abuse of workers overseas as well. And I feel a certain amount of responsibility if it's perpetrated by an American company. And I thought it was so interesting. A couple of years ago, I bought a Blue, the microphone company Blue. It's a Blue microphone, like a Snowball. It was on sale at Radio Shack for $40, and I was like, as far as technology goes, this represents something big. It's a USB microphone. This opens up the door to so many different podcasters and people who do vlogs, to get their voices out there. But at the same time, that it's this revolutionary piece of. We're going into a break.
Let's talk more about it when we come back. Gwyneth's with us, Patrick's with us, and I'm Vin Finelli. So class, I blame the lack of information that has been imparted to the millennials on the government, school systems, parents, corporations, and individual greed. I mean, to name a few. And Patrick said something that I think is very, very important. I think probably the most important thing from that he has said during this hour is this, and I'm paraphrasing. Now, Patrick, please correct me if I'm saying this wrong. But I believe you said something like this. Here's the meaning of what you said. The tools are available. So if you didn't learn it in school, you still have the opportunity, just like I do, just like Patrick does, just like Gwyneth does right now. And we are using these tools. The Internet, you can learn a lot, and most of it's free. If you go to the library, it is free. You can download and learn and read till your heart's content. You can learn about everything. And those tools are available. So is college the most important? No, I don't think so. Is it the be-all, end-all? I don't think so. And when my university calls and begs me for money, I go, I'm so glad you called because this is about my refund, right? and they don't know what to say because I feel that my education was lacking. And I went to a top 40 university. I don't talk about what it is, but I went to a pretty good university at the time. I don't say, but it was one of the top 40. Yeah. But it was a really good university at the time. But I still don't think I learned all the things that I needed to learn. I could have done better. Yeah. Should I have paid more attention? Yeah. Was it partly my fault? Yeah. However, I don't think they did their job the best they could either for a lot of reasons. So did I say what you meant semi-accurately, Patrick?
Yeah, more or less.
About the tools?
Yeah, I think we're at...
Do you want to expand?
Yeah, we're at a really interesting time in history where information is democratized, and I think that's frightening for a lot of folks that are at the top, because information is worth more than gold.
Gwyneth, your thoughts?
Okay, I think that a lot of the more aware students in the so-called education system in the public training camps are becoming aware of what a waste of time their days are. And a lot of them are just not showing up anymore. And it's beginning to happen on such a magnitude that, maybe the schools are, they're realizing that this is a problem where they can't just send CPS, they can't just send the police or the truant officer around for every single case because it's, they have it's called a TAFE school in Bendigo, which is the nearest really, really big town. It's got about 120,000 people. And my son is supposed to, I think he goes to the one at Charlton, which is the next town up, on Thursday, but he says, Mum, nobody goes there. And I said, well, why does nobody go there? And he says, because they don't teach anything. And I said, well, that makes sense. And, it gets to the point where the schools are not teaching, the children feel like that they're wasting their time, they stop showing up, and, and they turn around and they say to their parents, this is a waste of my time. It's a waste of your money. You know, we're
Yes.
just in a place where we're getting propaganda. I don't think they know that word. They're getting, they call it stupid, useless information. But I think it amounts to much the same thing. They just haven't been raised with the word propaganda. They don't know what it really means, in my humble opinion.
When our children were at the public
training... They just get fed up with having stupid, useless information shoved down their throats.
When our children were at the public training camp, I said, well, tell me about your day. And they said, well, what'd you learn? Nothing. And how often do you hear those? So what'd you learn today, son? Sweetheart, what'd you learn? Nothing. How often do you hear that? Every day, right?
Yeah.
Parents? Isn't that what we hear? Hey, Patrick, we got to do this again. What do you think?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Gwyneth, you up for it?
Yep, that'd be great.
Yep. So let's take it apart and figure out the solutions right here on USA Prepares. Patrick, thank you so much for doing this today. Gwyneth, thank you for joining us.